How do you know that Pope Leo is going to be a good pope? Because he's already said that J.D. Vance is wrong. J.D. Vance incurred the wrath of Pope Leo even before he was pope. That's not surprising. Vance has done more to shape American Catholicism in this last century than any Catholic living or dead. It started off, of course, with Vance being more or less responsible for the death of Pope Francis. Vance, as you recall, was scheduled to meet with the Pope, but Francis was not feeling well and pulled a fast one. He substituted a subordinate who lectured Vance on immigration, prisoners, and compassion. Francis later met briefly with Vance, but only to exchange greetings. That's it. Well, that's all it took, because Francis died hours later. Now, nobody's accusing Vance per se of attacking Francis, but no doubt that meeting is all it took for Francis to say to God, "All right, beam me aboard, Scotty." And though to some it may seem unlikely that Vance was the cause of Francis's death, it seemed unlikely that an American could be elected pope, and yet here we are.
Never in the history of the Catholic Church has there been an American pope, and now one name has been coming up as a possible frontrunner.
Cardinal Robert Prevost. He's from Chicago, but has spent most of his time serving in Peru.
But yes, it turns out J.D. Vance had another run-in with another pope, and this time it was Pope Leo, who earlier this year criticized Vance for his wholesale lack of understanding Catholic social teaching. At the time, Cardinal Prevost was working in the Vatican as one of Francis's top deputies, but then in February, Vance went off on this tear about how Christian love works. According to Vance, we start with our families, then we extend that love to our friends, and then neighbors, and then, if we have anything left over, we dole it out piecemeal to strangers, but not before asking if they have a drug or alcohol problem, never watch pornography, and in general, try not to make a nuisance of themselves with their seedy poverty and such. Now, anybody who has even remotely sat in a Catholic church and had to listen to the parable of the Good Samaritan knows that Vance's theory of how Christian love operates is as antithetical to Catholic teaching as you can get. Vance would have been on safer ground if he had tried to argue that the resurrection wasn't literal and physical as much as it was symbolic, psychological, and spiritual. At least if he had argued that, he could actually find a couple of Catholic theologians that would have backed him up. But giving love only when you've got enough leftovers is flat out wrong, and Cardinal Prevost let him know, posting this on Twitter. J.D. Vance is wrong. Jesus doesn't ask us to rank our love for others. He also posted criticism of Vance on immigration, so clearly not a fan. Now, usually when Ohio State goes up against Illinois, the Fighting Illini are in trouble, but in this case, the Buckeye got his butt whooped. Cardinal Prevost made it abundantly clear that Vance and Trump both are way outside the bounds of the teachings of the Catholic Church. So was the conclave trying to get back at J.D. Vance for killing Pope Francis, or were they just trying to tell Vance, yes, this is how wrong you were. We promoted someone to Pope just so we could make abundantly clear to the world how hopelessly incompetent you are when it comes to Catholic social teaching. And it's not like Pope Leo kind of doesn't agree with Vance. Pope Leo spent 20 years as a missionary priest in Peru, so he really doesn't agree with Vance's views on privilege, immigration, and especially American exceptionalism. In fact, Pope Leo dropped a hidden message for Vance, Trump, and all the American exceptionalists. In his address to the crowd at St. Peter's Square, Pope Leo started by speaking in Italian. He then moved on to address the crowd in Spanish. The one language he did not speak in was his native language, English. Leo wanted to make clear that he is a pope for the world, not a pope for America, that he stands with the marginalized, not the privileged. So if Vance wants to keep up this pretense that he is some scholarly Catholic who knows a lot because he went to Yale Law School, he better get ready to be taken down a notch. If past performance is a measure of current results, Pope Leo is no fan of either J.D. Vance or Donald Trump. In fact, unbeknownst to either Vance or himself, Cardinal Prevost gave a little leadership message designed to be about bishops, but clearly a lesson for Vance.
I think is very important. The bishop is not supposed to be a little prince sitting in his kingdom, but rather called authentically to be humble, to be close to the people he serves, to walk with them, to suffer with them, and to look for ways that he can better live the gospel message in the midst of his people.
I'm not sure you could find a more exactly opposite description of J.D. Vance than that. Now, naturally, as head of the state, Trump is going to expect an early meeting with Pope Leo, and as the nation's highest-ranking Catholic, Vance is going to expect the same. If Pope Leo really wanted to put them in their place, though, he'd meet with Joe Biden first. Now there's a Catholic. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.